All right, Stu Taylor back, and I feel blessed, and I feel the audience is so blessed to have on such remarkable talent here this morning, focusing now on mystery series. And I want to introduce a lady who is fascinating in her own right, but her books have drawn real acclaim nationally and internationally. The series is called the Daisy Gumm Majesty series, Gumm. If you want to Google it, I want to give you her name, first of all, is Alice Duncan. You can go to her. I always recommend you go to the website because there's more on there than I can talk. We have time here for. It's AliceDuncan.net. That's AliceDuncan.net. The books are published by ePublishing Works. You can go to ePublishingWorks.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com. Alice, welcome and congratulations on your remarkable achievements. I was really blown away. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My life seems really dull, but, whatever.
How many books in all have you written?
50-some. I've had 50-some published, probably more like 60 written. But
wow.
I know. And I've written under several pseudonyms, and nobody knows who any of me are, but that's okay. I'm really glad I hooked up with EPW because they're promoting my books, and that makes me feel very good.
Yeah, ePublishing, they're a wonderful company. And first of all, how did all of this start? Was this something you were just born with a skill or a talent? Because you don't write 50 or 60 books if you're not exceptional. It just doesn't happen. Even someone who isn't all that sharp will say, I think I'll quit after 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, it's the only thing I ever wanted to do in my life was write books. I mean, when I was a little kid, somebody'd say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd say, an author, because I didn't have a sense of humor back then. If they'd asked me that, today I probably would have said an elephant or something. But, what are you going to do when you're a kid? When you grow up, you're going to be an adult human being. But anyway, enough of that.
All right, I want to ask you, first of all, what is the theme of the books? Is it a consistent theme, or is each one of these mysteries different?
Well, yes, there is a consistent theme. Daisy Gumm Majesty lives in Pasadena, California, and the books start right after, well, actually they start in 1920. Her husband, Billy Majesty, signed up as soon as the U.S. entered the First World War, which was then known as the Great War because there hadn't been a World War before. And he was gassed and shot in the war, and he came home a cripple. And he got a teeny little army pension, but Daisy plied her skills as a phony spiritualist in order to make most of the family's living. Now, I wanted these books to be historical, cozy mysteries from the beginning, but they've had an interesting history. The publisher I first was writing them for, which was Kensington, decided that they didn't want to publish them as mysteries. They wanted me to take out the dead bodies and add a subsidiary romance, since Daisy was already married, and they published them and marketed them as romance novels, which of course they weren't. So the first 2 tanked, and then I had started editing for a company called 5 Star, and they picked up the series with the 3rd book, High Spirits, and they published them as women's fiction, which I'm not even quite sure what women's fiction is, but anyway. And then when I finally found EPW, they started publishing them as what I wanted them to be all along, which is historical cozy mysteries. A cozy mystery is one in which there's not a lot of blood and gore and there's no sex and some violence because, they're mysteries. But anyway, and Daisy is the heroine of the piece, and her husband, Billy, is resentful of her because, he thinks he should be the breadwinner. But he can't win bread because he's crippled and can't go to work. He was
all right. We want people to read these books because they are just so highly acclaimed. I want to get a little bit to your personal life, but before I do, I want to make sure we get this in. You're working on you got a release of a new book coming out December 9th. What have you got planned for the future? Because I know you're not stopping, so I'm not going to ask you. Are you going to continue? I know that.
I'm working on another Daisy book now. It's called Bruised Spirit. And it was inspired by a woman in Australia who wrote me a letter, and I wrote her back. She wrote me an email, and I wrote her back, and she was so astonished. She said that I, a published author, she called me a famous author, which is not right. I'm not a famous author. But anyway, she wrote me back.
You are, but you're humble. I already know that about you. Go ahead.
Oh, well. Anyway, we corresponded back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I kept asking her for her address because I wanted to send her some books. And it finally came out that she was actually homeless because she'd had a terrible experience. Her husband had beaten her practically to death and locked her in a basement, and she just barely escaped with her life. And he was a lawyer, so he gets all the perks, and she's been trying and trying and trying for more than a year now to get a home. She finally got a home.
Let's hold the suspense for people buying the book. Why are people buying your books? What is it? It's got to be something. You've written 50, 60 books. What is it? Tell us the secret.
I don't know what the secret is. I think the secret is I'll tell you, when my first published book came out, it was called One Bright Morning, and it was what I considered an emotionally wrenching historical romance novel. It was, this poor widow woman in Lincoln County, New Mexico, was trying to raise her daughter on her own. And a woman whom I took a class from named Meredith Brucker, it was a class called How to Get Your Book Published, basically. And she was right. It worked. I got my first book published. She went through all the steps, how to create a proposal and send it off and stuff. And Harper published my first book, and Meredith asked me to speak at the South Pasadena Public Library, because I was living in Pasadena at the time, my own hometown. And she asked me to read from my book, so I read the first paragraph, and everybody in the audience laughed. And I thought, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be funny. This is an emotionally wrenching tale. But apparently I can't help it. They just come out kind of funny. And people seem to really identify with Daisy. She, getting back to the Daisy books, they like her a lot, and she has a backup cast of characters that are a lot of fun. Her father used to be a chauffeur for rich movie people and stuff. Then he had a heart attack, and he couldn't work anymore. Her mother is the chief bookkeeper at the Hotel Maringo, which is a nice job for a woman at the time, although if she were a man, she'd be making twice as much money. And her Aunt Vi cooks for Daisy's best
They're going to have to
customer.
read these books to find out. You also have a fascinating background. I wish we could have gotten into it. I'll just say that Alice resides in Roswell, New Mexico. Do I need to say anything else? But
I rescue dachshunds.
check out AliceDuncan.net and be sure to get the whole Daisy Gumm Majesty Mysteries, published by E Publishing Works. Thank you. It has been a real pleasure.